The dangers of labeling people. What is stigma? Stigma is discrimination against a person based on a perceivable characteristics or traits. The stigma of being labeled as different by family, friends, co-workers, employers, and society overall is quite detrimental to one's self-esteem. It can have a negative impact on how you see yourself, and it can affect both your relationships and your productivity. This can lead to severe mental illness, such as depression, self-loathing, and worst of all, an increased rate of suicide. Watch to the end to hear my tips on how to overcome labeling. Due to the stigma that comes with the label neurodiverse, parents will want their kids, peers, family members, or neighbors to know that they have been diagnosed with a learning disability. Unfortunately, the shame these kids feel is carried with them into adulthood. They are afraid of how being neurodiverse will affect their ability to hold a job or be successful. As we can see, this is quite a vicious cycle. I have to admit, I can completely relate to this. I lived under that stigma until I began confronting and embracing my neurodiversity. It was because of that very stigma, that fear of how I will be judged despite my accomplishments, that I held myself back. Once you actually manage to get yourself a job, there's the fear of your neurodiversity being discovered, despite trying to hide it or cope with it as best you can. Dealing with the horrible feeling of being labeled as difficult employee isn't easy. They can see there is something different about you. In some cases, they just can't pinpoint what it is, while in others, they don't want to know. They sometimes even look for ways to make things difficult so you will be left with no option but to leave or just let you go outright. As I thought more deeply about this, I began to see things from a different perspective. If you like this video, then I'm sure you would like Do You Know Who You're Working With, which you can find here. Unfortunately, labels give people a predefined interpretation of you, but on the flip side, labels can also empower you. When we don't allow ourselves to be defined, or we don't embrace a label, then we stumble through life not knowing who we are and why we think or do things in a particular way. In the case of an individual with learning difficulties, without the defined label, they wander through life facing challenges and not understanding why they hit these walls. The label of I have a learning difficulty, and it is called, I'll let you fill in the blank, empowers you to know what you have. By knowing the terminology, it will help you understand how you think, what tools you need to tackle the things that challenge you and help you break through the walls you face. These labels are only one aspect of who you are and do not entirely define you. If you don't take ownership of these labels, then we allow others to define who you are based on their own interpretation, which means they could potentially see you only as that label in a negative, non-productive manner. Don't allow them to have power over you, rather than you empowering yourself. Embrace your label, take ownership, and empower yourself. Take away their power and educate them on how your neurodiversity empowers you to perform at levels they cannot. If you found this useful, then take a moment to subscribe, leave a comment, and take a leap and transform.